Good morning, everyone. I'm Luke Kerner, and I'm with Blockchain Co-Investors, which is a crypto fund-to-fund. We're investing in over 40 of the leading crypto VCs. And I started something called Crypto Mondays, which is the leading crypto meetup in the world. And it's great to be here. This is my second time in Singapore. I was here for Consensus in 2019. And was completely blown away by Singapore, and I'm excited to be back. And Robert, now this is your first time here, and you can introduce yourself and what you do, but you're now opening up an office for your company here, so I wanted to touch on that, but why don't
we have an office, our first few employees who are here in the audience that just joined, so we're officially in Singapore and servicing customers all over Asia. We actually have been for several years from the United States, where we're headquartered, but looking forward to doing that more materially out here.
And why don't you tell them what Lukka does?
So Lukka's an institutional software and data provider servicing any businesses that have crypto assets on their balance sheet. And so we help them be more financially responsible, pass audits, and manage all of the very messy data that is created from all the innovation that happens in the crypto ecosystem.
And why are financial audits so hard?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I guess even traditional financial audits can be challenging and burdensome, but they're very necessary to add transparency for shareholders and any other stakeholders. And so that all is consistent for crypto as well. However, there's a bunch of nuances that come with valuing these assets, organizing the data, that make what would usually be a traditional audit a lot more challenging. And so even the auditors are figuring out right now still how to audit crypto businesses effectively and in a more mature way. And so we're very, very deeply involved in a lot of those conversations at Lukka with our customers.
And so when do you generally get involved with the company?
I'd say it varies, all different stages. Typically, earlier stage, they're less interested in our services because they're not quite ready to invest all the capital that they need to into their back office operations. They probably haven't been through a financial audit yet, or they're considering it. And then when they get to a mid-stage or a later stage where they're developing more risk processes, hiring a compliance officer, chief risk officer, or being required to do a financial audit, that usually creates a phone call to us where we start commercial conversations.
And most of the time, do you obviously you're excited to start then, but would they have been better off calling earlier and starting these processes so they were in a better position, when it came time to actually need it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think most would agree, particularly auditors, to be proactive in that approach. The earlier that you can prepare for an audit, or any other risk processes that an organization is going to hugely pay off later. You don't want to be doing all that stuff when you're scaling and dealing with revenue, developing your products, and much easier to do at an earlier stage if you can afford to do it.
And as a VC and a fund-to-fund, I'm always interested in how companies have been funded and kind of what your outlook there is. Want to share that little bit of that history?
Sure. Our latest fundraise was Series E. It was on a $1.3 billion valuation. We had raised about $200 million, just shy of that, in the 18 months prior to that, over 4 consecutive rounds. And so a lot of that was over the last year. There's a lot of capital being provided to various crypto businesses that I think a lot of companies benefited from. And then we've also scaled our team up to about 180 people today from 45 at the beginning of that 2-year journey.
Wow. Okay, so that's a big staff. How is that distributed around the world?
So we have about 20 outside of the United States. The rest are scattered all over the United States. Our biggest nexus is in New York City. That's where we started. And we've just recently opened up an office in Zug, Switzerland, where we do have our first few employees that are there. In Singapore that I just mentioned, and then we're continuing to do that in several other locations. Really, wherever there's a large population of crypto businesses and right now, with all the scrutiny and the events that have happened, particularly this year, and a couple of the failures that we've seen, it's created, I think, a new sense of urgency and appreciation for risk management and some of the things that are a couple steps typically removed from generating revenue that these businesses are usually focused on during bull markets.
And it's interesting because, on one hand, obviously, all of these failures have heightened the need for proper financial accounting. On the other hand, they've also, to some degree, contributed to crypto winter. And so, how has your business kind of grown, during the kind of the crypto winter period?
It's interesting, and I think I wouldn't attribute the crypto winter to those failures. I would say they probably
Well, they didn't help.
worsened it. Right. And but I think the bigger macroeconomic causes, most people would agree. And I'm hoping that crypto markets peg. I'm sure a lot of people are depeg from these traditional markets. But regardless, when they are here, operational efficiencies are key. If you can make your business more resilient, and most of the businesses that have focused on that historically, and a lot of these are our customers, are very comfortable right now. They're looking at the current conditions as just a different set of opportunities from what they experienced during bull markets. And so I'd say there's a lot of very successful businesses right now that are thriving during these conditions. And we see some of them in the press acquiring other businesses and things like that. But there's definitely a lot. I mean, we might see less marketing and less public awareness that they're thriving, but it doesn't mean that they aren't. So.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think resilience is, probably one of, if not kind of the most important characteristic for an organization to have, right? Because every organization goes through tough times, and crypto winter, right? Winter is always coming.
Exactly. And it will again, right? And we're going to experience them. So I think these businesses being more resilient, it's amazing. A lot of younger companies are looking for an exit. They're creating some great products, but they're not trying to create a large, robust, mature business for the long run. They're looking to be acquired or some other form of an exit. And I think the few that are focusing on just building very large, mature businesses, and they're not focused on the exit strategy, tend to be a little bit more risk mature because they have a stronger appreciation for the capabilities that'll enable them to last for that period.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, as you got such a global business, how do you kind of see the kind of global landscape for crypto?
I'll say it's very exciting. Coming out to Singapore has been very exciting. Really, I think there's been very few cities that I've traveled, and I've been doing it quite a bit this year, where we haven't seen a ton of momentum. And what's interesting is a lot of that momentum you don't notice unless you're locally actually in those cities, which is
you're preaching to the choir. This is what I do going around the globe. I spend 6% of my time, going to different crypto wherever the crypto capital of the world is during that week. And this is obviously in the world. This is it for the crypto capital of the world, undoubtedly. And what's really surprising to me, and I know you've noticed it, is how few Americans. There were a lot more. The last time I was here was Consensus 2019, and kind of it felt like there were a lot more Americans. So I don't know what you would attribute that to.
Yeah, and this is my first time here, so I guess I don't have the relative context, but I've been surprised as well. I don't know if it's pandemic circumstances that's preventing travel or
well, I guess
what,
it's
but that's
just,
been
it's just
surprising to me
not
as
a
well.
priority, right? I mean, that's my assumption is, and it's winter, so I'm sure that's a part of it too for these companies. But were you at Mainnet in New York?
I was at DAS and some of the other events that
that preceded it, because that's where I was last week, and I'd been at NearCon in Lisbon the week before that, and ZenCon in Milan the week before that, and Mainnet to me and DAS, I don't know if you feel, I was surprised at how subdued the whole vibe felt, and that's because I think New York, so Mainnet at least has a lot of investors who are more focused on the token price, I think, than the builders that were at the different conferences. But here, again, I feel there's just a lot more excitement here than I felt. I don't know, how you would contrast it to DAS.
DAS, historically, and we've gone to that event very frequently, we tend to see the same businesses.
And that's the Digital Asset Summit for the folks who don't know.
From the Blockworks puts on, which is a great event, very institutional focused, and we typically see a lot of the same businesses every year. This year, I'd say we saw a lot of new ones that I hadn't seen the previous year, and they were primarily traditional financial institutions or similar, which was very exciting to see. So there's definitely a lot of that, a lot going on. That's definitely a theme that
And
that
did
I
you
would
get
mention.
where a lot of them actually kind of actively, aggressively pursuing the opportunities, or are they more kind of putting their toe in the water?
I'd say they're feeling it out. Some of them are going through regulatory approvals. Many traditional financial institutions are already regulated heavily, so they're not going to get into crypto without doing it by the book and ensuring that they have all the proper approvals. And their businesses are much more regulated in a straightforward way. So I'd say there's a lot of observing, but those organizations, they take a long time to mobilize new pipelines and new offerings. So I think they've been at work for a while. Many of them are launching some of their offerings now, and the others that aren't quite ready to launch are definitely hard at work behind the scenes.
Well, and I imagine those kinds of customers, they've got to start engaging your services from day one, right? They can't
Exactly.
begin to do any business without, yeah.
It is. It's there's vendor risk assessments, there's RFPs, requests for proposals, there's all kinds of processes that are very lengthy that are really designed to mitigate vendor risks, which are more important than ever when dealing with a lot of the very young companies that are catering to all the crypto innovation. So it is tricky sorting through all of them, and we take great pride at Lukka in trying to make that process as easy as possible for those organizations. And so we try to demonstrate a lot of those processes, even though we're a relatively small company compared to them.
And if you think about other companies in the industry that are overlapping with you that you plug into, I got before Milan I was in Tel Aviv, and I visited the Fireblocks office there.
Yep.
Wow, that was buzzing. So I assume you've got a work with Fireblocks and others?
Absolutely, yeah. We work with Fireblocks, with Copper, with a lot of their peers. We share a lot of overlapping customers with our capabilities, so it's very natural to do business development, to do events. We're doing some events out here with a couple, and we just announced a partnership with Talos, who I know is here as well. They're doing some great things, and it's important for a lot of these organizations servicing crypto to partner together and to support each other, and there's a lot of very complementary products that they have.
And when you're looking at and there are a lot of great companies, there's a single one you go, here's one company that's really coming up that maybe people in the audience aren't as familiar with.
Sure, that's tough. I'd say big fan of Solidus Labs. And there's some very early startups.
What do they do?
So they're trade surveillance. So they're a SaaS company that offers trade surveillance capabilities and products, and so serves a lot of government agencies and other businesses that are managing counterparty risk and other trade risk activities. And all the logos that you mentioned, I think, are all great examples of companies that are really thriving and doing some great things, and have very mature global strategies, which not all of them, as you mentioned earlier. Yeah. Sometimes we see that regional effect. A lot of those companies they realize that, crypto inherently is global in nature, right? It doesn't really see borders. We see the borders form a little bit due to the regulatory restrictions, but the underlying technology doesn't have those limits. So I think it's very natural for the businesses to do the same.
And when you see the regulatory restrictions, do you see a lot of kind of regulatory arbitrage between the different jurisdictions?
Absolutely. I think we see that a ton. We'll see companies that don't want to deal with regulation in the US or in Europe, which are two of the more regulated areas, tend to form entities outside of the United States. I think that's temporary in nature, and that ultimately the markets are too big in those other regions, and so in contrast to the other companies that are maybe starting off in a heavily regulated area and then are going global, I think are going to have more long-term benefits for sure.
Makes a lot of sense. So we're down to our last minute. What's the last thing you want to leave the audience with about Lukka?
Yeah, I'd say, and I say this pretty frequently at events, the importance of operational risk and a lot of the things that a CEO or a CFO or someone doesn't want to deal with today, such as financial audits or hiring a chief risk officer or a risk team. I can't say it enough that it's important to actually do those things, do them proactively, do them before you need them, and start thinking about all the things that could catch up to you later. And the cost to do those today is far less than doing them when you have to later.
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever said, the biggest mistake I ever made was focusing too much on risk.
Right. It's kind of like cybersecurity as well, right?
Exactly. Let's give Robert a big hand.
Thank you. And thank you.